There you go.
New York, how are you, everybody? This is Bill Forster, and I'm very excited about today's conversation. Real Talk Chronicles. Forster is right here, working in behind the scenes. But today's topic is very important to me and to my guests and my panelists. We're talking about the youth, the future of our society, which right now, with so much going on in the world today, we need to keep them on the leadership path. This is a three-part series that we're doing. And tonight, I just have some, I call them experience. They might deem themselves experts, which I probably will deem them. It would be unfair to call them friends right now. I think they're boarded family. Absolutely. I've worked with them all in some kind of capacity. I've hung out with them on a friendship level, a familyship level, and I am so excited to have their input tonight, to hear what they have to say. We tonight will try to give some kind of excerpt on problem solving, problem, and then a solution. So I'm going to introduce them, and then I'm going to let them tell them a little bit about themselves. Excuse me. So starting at my bottom under me, I have my brother Billy Council. Brother Billy, introduce yourself and tell people about yourself, please.
Billy Council, as you all know, better known as Coach Billy, have been an advocate for my community for a plethora of years, mentoring young men through coaching and just being an advocate in the community for the voices of our young people. Have ran several youth programs for New York City. So that's me in a nutshell.
To the my left, to Billy's right, I have my brother Cliff Simmons. Cliff Simmons, so it was a pleasure to have you. Please, Cliff, tell them what you do and how you do it, brother. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, hey, Cliff.
Yeah. Unmute yourself.
Cliff still can't hear you.
You gotta unmute yourself, Cliff. You was live before.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got Cliff Simmons, Blue Now. Go ahead, Cliff. Uh-oh, we lost you.
Lost you again.
I clicked it off. Is it okay?
Now we leave it alone. I got it from here.
All right. Well, I thank you once again for inviting me. I come representing a large community of individuals whose purpose is the spiritual, cultural, and moral character development of youth of African descent. We have our largest component called in Blue Nile Passage. Our largest component is our mentoring, is our manhood and womanhood training component. But in that, mentoring is a part of that. So we do public speaking, time management, conflict resolution, mass media analysis, economics, politics, history, spiritual grounding, and each youth gets a one-to-one lifetime mentor. We stick with the youth for life because we believe that it's important that we nurture and feed the next generation so they can then come and take over our positions, and then that this cycle will continue, that it never ends. So it's a 9-month process, but it's a lifelong commitment that we make. And so we've been doing it for 26 years. It started out at the Abyssinian Baptist Church in 1994. We incorporated and moved out of the church. We're still a ministry of the church, but we incorporated and we started taking youth from the New York tri-state area. We also in 2007 we moved up and opened up a affiliate in Westchester. So we have an affiliate in Westchester. We service the Greenburgh and White Plains area and all of really Westchester County. And so that's what we do.
Thank you for definitely, brother, for coming. And last but not least, never least and never last, I have my good brother Ivo. Ivo, please enlighten the people on what you do, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill. Good evening, everyone. Ivo Philbert, Vice President with the Jackie Robinson Foundation, where we provide scholarship dollars to African-American kids to go to college, and we provide year-round support through our 42 Strategies for Success. Prior to that, spent most of my career in senior management with the Inroads organization, where we really spent time developing young Black, Latino, and Native American young people for careers in corporate America. And I do a lot of support in my community as well with organizations. I sit on the board of the Counseling Foundation, which is Billy's organization, and support lots of other youth-focused organizations.
Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate you all. Like I said, this is the first part. There's a 3-part segment that we're doing with saving our youth, saving our children, saving our young adults, saving our men, saving our women. This is Real Talk Chronicles. I ask you all out there, if you like it, share it. I expect all my Real Talk Chronicle people that have come from the conception of this to right now, share it. I ask my panelists to share it if they have the time and their friends, because right now we're going to get it in and we're going to talk real about what's happening in our community. Right now, from COVID, homeschooling, police brutality, people are just anxious to get out of the house. But we've seen our young doing some of the protesting, not all of our young, participate in some rioting and looting that I'm sure none of us are definitely happy about. We've seen our young men and female act certain ways that are not becoming of our culture, of who we were brought up to be as people, kings and queens. I want to ask you all, and I'll start with you, Ivo. Tell the audience, what do you think the problem starts with? And we're going to work on the solution, but I'm going to go with you, Ivo, then I'm going to you, Cliff, and then I'll go to you, Billy.
Well, I think we have.
What you think the problem is?
Well, I think we have a multitude of issues, right? So first of all, we have to acknowledge and recognize that a lot of our young people today were raised by kids, right? So it starts in the home. It starts in the home in terms of what you were taught when you're growing up as a kid. Secondly, we have to look at the economic impact of things, right? Many families are struggling and having a hard time just in general. So when you have issues at home that spill over in terms of abuse and behaviors, that translates to what young people learn at home and what they bring out into the streets. Another factor, I think, is we as a community, to a large degree, have not been involved, and we sort of blame the young people for everything. And some of the things that we blame them for are not on them, okay? So when we talk about the looting and rioting, yes, we've had some of that, but sometimes we have to really be careful that we don't blame them for everything that's not necessarily there. So I'm gonna say the issue starts at home first, and then when we think of all of the societal issues that translates into behaviors for our young people. And in many cases, our communities have not stepped up to be engaged and involved with our young people to help to steer them in the right direction.
Thank you. Cliff?
Dr. King said, a riot is the language of the unheard. And I think that our youth or our people have been unheard or not heard for so long that, you know, it then spills out into emotions such as violence. And you know, to tell you the truth, most of the protest has been nonviolent.
Exactly.
Yes.
But there are pockets of it, and that is to be expected, I believe. Not accepted, not that we want it to be, but expected. I think that our sojourn in this country has been one that you know, has not the family structure has been broken through drugs that have been allowed to come into this community, into this country, but directed toward the African American specifically community, through broken homes, through incarceration, when the incarceration rates have come in, and Black and Latino males are the ones that are being that were focused. COINTELPRO that broke down organizations that were doing well for our people. So there's a systemic, there has been and continues to be a systemic force that has broken down our people. And then even if you look at the music, when rap first came out, you know, it was mostly positive. It was mostly, you know, even if you had beef with someone, it was done in a positive way. But when the powers that be took over the music industry, they allowed and still continue to allow and push forward the negative images, the negative message, the negative stereotypes. That feeds into the psyche of the young people that are coming up to think and act in ways that they would normally not do. So you have a historical systemic racism. You have the mass incarceration. You have the takeover of the media. All of these forces have had a very negative impact. That's why we as a people, must look internally. I'm good with helping others, but I'm more so looking forward to help ourselves first. If we help ourselves and do for us, as Elijah Muhammad said, do for self, then we can start talking about do for others. That's why in our organization, we deal with youth of African descent. And that's who we deal with, that's who we raise, that's who we nurture, that's who we mentor, that's who we love, and that's who we believe are going to take over from us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hold on. I'm coming to you right now, Billy. But I just wanted to say, Brandon, I mentioned looting because we were in that. There were people of color looting. I'm not saying we were the part of the problem. I'm just putting, we're talking about the youth and trying to make the youth better. And our youth is factual. I'm giving you facts. They're looting. So this topic is not about looting, but I brought that in. So we're covering a whole dynamic. So just don't get all revved up for nothing. The topic is about helping our youth, and our youth were part of that looting. So that's why I mentioned that, okay? Thank you. Go ahead, Brother Billy.
Well, first of all, again, Bill, thank you for this platform that you have allowed us to all to be on. And thank you to the two gentlemen who are here with us. I can contest to both of you guys that everything that you have said has been, you know, the biggest problem from the beginning. You know, when we look at our young men, you know, let's just say with our young men, it starts with us, right? Like, I think a lot of times as men, we give up, right? We give up on once we get to a certain point in our lives and our career that we give up and we forget that we were once those young brothers' ages. We were doing the things that those young brothers are doing. You know, as you look at this time now where you have Criminal Justice Reform Act about to happen, when you have COVID-19, when you have, you know, no jobs, no money in the community, no money in the household, you know, we're putting our kids up against the wall, and we want them to come out and be strong, right? But we're not facing the issue that we're dealing with mental health issues also, right? So a lot of our young brothers, our young men, don't have the ability to get the help that they need, right? And it starts with us, right? I think, you know, as men in our community, we have to find a way to get back on those street corners, get back outside, grab one of them up, and, you know what I mean, and kind of become mentors, right? And this is one of the reasons why, you know, Brother Elder started his program, I started mine, because we have to figure out a way to help our own. And it's not going to help. It's not going to work if we kind of sit around and just talk about them, but not be solution driven and solution oriented to try to find a way to help, right? And again, we're not going to save every last one of them, right? But if we can all save one or two, then, you know what I mean, then we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. And gentlemen, I appreciate you all. Thank you for coming. Everybody out there, remember, this is Real Talk Chronicles. Like us and share us on YouTube. You can like us and share us right now. I have 3 experienced individuals, family, I call them family, that we have all been out there for years trying to just keep, along with the sisters too. When I say people of color, I'm talking about everybody. Right now, I'm just kind of concentrating on the men. My wife will be definitely picking up part two Wednesday with our esteemed panel too. But let me just say this, gentlemen, we are all brought up. I was raised by a village. I had my father. And I hate to say that, I was fortunate. I was lucky enough to have my father in the home. That's just what the era I think I was in. My father was there. But the things that my father didn't teach me, I had a village to teach me and watch over me. Maybe we can all elaborate on what happened to that aspect of it. You know, you can give a little brief synopsis, your own personal feelings, unless you want to throw some statistics or facts in there, on what happened to a village raising our children and us being there. Because all of you are a village that still raise the children of today. And I applaud you for that. So I'm going to start with you, Cliff. Give me your insight. What do you think happened to that village that we raised our children? And I'll go to you, Billy, and then I'll go to you, Ivo. Go ahead, Cliff.
It goes back to, like I said, with the mass incarceration, with COINTELPRO, with you know, with the powers that be, they broke the family structure up. I grew up in the Vietnam era, and I saw guys go away and come back, and they were out of their minds. You know, they come from good households, they were good brothers. They came back and they were out of it, and I'm not saying all of them, but I've seen a number of them, they were totally out of their minds. And so Vietnam, you know, killed a lot of people. When you talked about the Afghanistan and Iraq, and you know, we have decimated the black family through the decimation, the degradation, the destruction of the black male. And we have gone through a couple of generations now with young black men not having that father figure around. And then you have the takeover of the mass media industry, and that you have people saying, well, I raised my children and I don't want anybody touching them. I don't want anybody saying anything to them. When I was growing up, when I did something wrong, I would get 2 or 3 whoopings outside from whoever saw me do wrong, get back home, tell my mama. That was the worst. And I didn't want to go to my daddy. My daddy happened to be a really gentle man and only had to warn me sternly once. But when I look back on it, my mama gave me such a beating that my daddy said, no, that'd be child abuse, you know? So we had that village concept. Now it's a concept of like, you can't touch mine. I don't care. So I was a parent coordinator working in the New York City public school. I would have people come in. Some of their children were buck wild. They come in and want to start fights with the principal, with the teachers, saying nobody better put their hands on my kids. These youth needed a butt whooping and needed something up their butt. You know the deal, Bill. You know, so that has all been that has been taken out. And then the curriculum. They go into school and the curriculum is not uplifting. It's not empowering. And I've seen it for a fact. A lot of these youth are just being pushed through. They're being pushed through. They're not attaining, you know, the level of education that they need to be attaining. And then the books that they're getting are not spiritually uplifting them. So there's a lot going on in society, which is why we in Blue Nile bring them in, and it's a whole different set of curriculum, whole set of different rules and regulations. And when they come in, you could be the wildest, whatever you want to be, but you sit in that room and it's surrounded by a group of men. I'm just talking about for the male, surrounded by a group of men, and they know. Some of the parents will say, well, my son can't sit still. My son is buck wild in school. Yeah, but when he's surrounded by a group of loving but demanding and no punkish stuff, individuals, all of a sudden, that youth that you saw in that school system is acting in a whole different way. And then when we deal with love and we show up in the street to see them, we show up at their concerts, we show up at play, we show up at parent teachers night, they start understanding that, yeah, this is the real deal. So it's a combination.
Absolutely. Definitely. Go ahead. Next.
You know, when we sit here and we talk about that village, right? That village, and as Elder spoke about it, you know, that village was taken away from us, and we haven't been able to grab it back and glue it together, right? So, you know, when you think about, and I'm just going to piggyback a little bit off of you, Elder, when you talk about the dads not being in the home, right? Like everything starts at home. No matter what you see, your first learning experience is where? With your parents, with your mom, with your dad, with your grandparents, right? So a lot of that stuff has been taken away right now because, you know, there's a lack of a dad in the home, right? Mom has to try to play every piece. She has to play provider. She has to play mom. She has to play dad. She has to play spiritual warrior. She has to play every piece of that, right? So we lose that organic piece of a male presence, right? And when you lose that piece, you know, it's hard to gather that back in time to help, right? So let's look at this. Let's look at you take a young man who has been raised by his mother, who's been in, you know, who's from the projects, who, you know, mom doesn't really have a great job, and she's probably living off the you know, she's on the system. You know, what happens to that young man, right? That young man turns to, you know, the corners. He turns into the neighborhood, you know, guys who kind of becomes his who becomes his spiritual and his mentors, right? So we got to try to figure out a way to kind of like, you know, find a way that we men can come back into the household and be men in the household, right? So there's a difference between having a man in the household that's just in the household than having a man that's in the household doing what he's supposed to be doing and setting examples for those young men to follow.
Thank you. Ivo?
I think it's a complex issue, right? And certainly it all starts, as Billy and Elder said, in the home. And then we also have to add to that the racial systemic structures that we're raised in, right, from elementary school. When you think about, especially young Black men, Elder talked about this, they're hyper, they're whatever, all these things, right? And I'm one of those kids that, you know, they're like, I ran my mouth in school, right? And they're like, but I was bored. So fortunately, I had teachers who recognized that and challenged me in different ways. But how many young men don't have that, right? Don't get that. So you have the racial issues there, you have the cultural nuances that play a part of that in that systemic challenge. And then you have, from a societal perspective, and I hear Billy talking about, yes, the dads are gone, and that's a whole nother issue, right? Because we have a structure that have dealt with Black men in particular much more harshly than it's dealt with anybody else. We have men who go into the system very early on for not the right reasons and shouldn't be there, and how things are addressed. We have all of that that's a part of this equation as well. And then you add to that the lack of community. Because I've known a lot of, you know, households where the father wasn't necessarily in the household, but there was still a community of men who really made sure that those young men understood the path they had to walk. And we've kind of lost that, right? And some of that, you know, our mothers have contributed some of that, right? So I don't want to map around, I don't want to talk to them, they can't come to this, and all of that stuff, and don't talk to my, and sometimes, I will say this because I've experienced it a lot in my career, I've had to talk to mothers about getting in the way to let their young men grow up and be young men. Yes. So it's a very complex issue that we're dealing with here when it comes to the educational system, it comes to the judicial system, it comes to the community that's been broken, it comes to the drugs that's been infused in our communities. All of those things, you know, play a part in these challenges.
You know, it's so funny. I mean, you all have said such eloquent things that makes absolute sense. Hold on, Cliff. And the thing is, we have all those are reasons. Our fathers being incarcerated, unemployment, single parenting. But the one thing is, those are things that we can't solve. But let me just say this, and I can talk about my own person, because you know that's what Real Talk is about, talking about that. I've had the street men that was out there, the number runners back in the day is what they called them, the boosters or the killers or whomever, that took a community of people of color, like I said, the Latin brothers and the African American brothers, and told me, yo, wait a minute, you a good kid. You going to school, right? Don't let me catch you out here doing what I wanted to do. There was a time when I said, when I got older, I was like, wait a minute, this fast life is getting good to me. I had an OG, Lord rest his soul, give me the business and say, yo, listen, man, don't you come out here. You know where you're supposed to be. You ain't built for this. Even if I dabbled in it. You understand what I'm trying to say? His whole ideology with me was like, yo, I'm gonna make sure that you stay in there. We touched on it earlier about a village. We lost a village. I think society has taken that village away from us. I worked at the Harlem Children's Home. I have no problems. Like I said, this is Real Talk Chronicles. I have no problem saying it. I saw parents that wanted to reprimand their children. And then the principal called BCW, ACS, and say, well, wait a minute, they just whipped the kid's ass. Well, wait a minute. And I'm looking at the principal like, what do you want? Listen, you've taken that punishment that has been old school. I'm not saying we all have to be that way. But let me tell you something. I feared my father until I was 16 years old. Let me tell you something. And I respected him until he passed away. I respected every man that he introduced me to. You understand what I'm saying? I respected every woman that watched me grow up. Now, I have a village of mothers. We all can contest to that. There are people right now that I still call Miss, Ma'am. You know, why? Ivo, you touched on it, and I mean, all of you touched on it, but you said, when you said something about the mothers, but I'm trying to figure out, where did the manners go? Can anybody start with that? I mean, Ivo, I'll go with you, then Cliff, and I'll end with Billy. But where did the manners go? Like the kids today don't have manners. Why? Why is that?
Again, it's what's patterned at home. It's what's patterned in their circles, right? So when you have, whether it's parents or partners or people who interact, when they communicate with each other and there's no respect in their level of communication, that's what that child sees. That's what they're going to emulate. That's what happens when they go out the door. The same thing, you know, how many times do we hear a kid, you call them and that, what? You know, my mother smacked the heck out of me. What? Who you answering what? That was number one, you know. So, you know, or you have, and again, it's not all about parents. It's also about the circles that they're in, where the way they interact and they talk to each other and they engage is a very disrespectful way, and that translates when they go outside of those circles.
Yes, absolutely. Let me tell you something. I just want to interject for a second. I implore you all to go back later on and comment and speak to the people that are talking and watching you and supporting Real Talk Chronicles. I ask you all to like it if you share it. People are saying things like, Monica Thompson, what's up, sis? She's saying, growing up, there were community centers where you can get mentoring, learn skills, and form more community-based relationships. Yep. June Broxton, what's up, sister? She said, yo, you keep preaching, Elder Simmons. My cousin Marquita, more mentoring is needed. These children are running around like animals. The youth yesterday in the Berkway was 13 years old. That's out in Southeast DC. That's where a lot of my family's from. More male role models are needed. If we are going to stop the black on black that occurs, I totally agree with you, because we need to stop that. I just wanted to read some of it. There's so many people out here that are chiming in. Anthony, young, he's a young brother now. What is he, Cliff, right? Anthony Purdy. He had that case when he was in the next grade and didn't deserve it because circumstances. So we got kids being pushed, but you're a smart young man, so don't ever worry about that. Shout out to Elder Simmons. I mean, not Elder Simmons, Elder Joseph Harris. Thank you for chiming in. DeWeese, my brother from the Hill. You know, these are a lot of people that just chiming out. What's up, cuz? Linda, Vanetta, Steve. I see a lot of Athelia. I see all of you chiming in. Vanetta, yes, butt whippings have never hurt no one. However, it's always the answer. Talk with your kids. Very true. Once you need, what's up, Steph? Once you meet some parents, it makes sense why the children are acting that way. You're right. You know, kids are doing the things that they're emulating at home.
Bill, can I interject something quickly, Bill? About
of course, absolutely. Go ahead, please.
Good Lord knows I grew up on butt whoopings from my mother and my father, and I will look, and I threaten my nieces and nephews every day. I think what we also have to recognize in that dynamic, though, is the parents or the guardians sometimes are so stressed with all of the other issues. When they do the butt whooping, it's out of anger and emotion. And then that translates to abuse. And we got to recognize, I've had to stop my sister-in-law, because at one time she was going to beat my niece, but she was doing it out of anger. And I was like, you can't do that. You got to walk away from that anger and then come back and whoop her when you were level-headed and clear. So you understand, and she understands why you're whooping her behind. But if you beat her out of anger, that is uncontrolled emotion at that point.
You know, what's so funny that you said that. I remember dating somebody one time, and she was telling me about her sister whipping her son. And I said, well, why do you think she's doing that? And she said she's damning the father. And, all right, but you can't damn the father for the choices that you make too. You understand what I'm saying? So so listen, we're not coming down on our sisters like that. We're just keeping it real. This is Real Talk Chronicles. This is where we're saying what's real. These are people that have been on the front lines. I have Ivo, I have Cliff Simmons, I have Brother Billy Council, myself. We all have been out here. I'm sure so many of you are out here. The bottom line is we're trying to save our youth. And this is what we're trying to do. Just kind of come together and converse about how can we make our children get back to that village. I mean, we would love to get back to that village. I don't think back. There are probably small segments of that village that maybe like Ivo has with Billy's son, like Cliff. I know his children, like, you know, mentoring. There's so many of us that are part of a family, you know, Aiden, you know, Cliff, Clay and Greer's son. We are all here for each other. So Cliff, I mean, enlighten us some more, please, brother. Give us some knowledge.
So yeah, I wanted to piggyback on that call. She said what I was getting ready to say, and that is that they've taken away a lot of the after-school programming. They've taken away a lot of the after-school centers. I mean, there's Kennedy Center that's located on 34 West 134th Street here in Harlem. That saved my life. That was an outlet for me, especially after my mother died in my hands when I was 16. I was angry, frustrated, and that was the place where I went to, and I got the nourishment, and also I was able to just at night just play ball, get all that energy out of me, you know. And so after school centers and also summer jobs, you know, summer jobs and winter jobs, and you know, those things aren't around anymore. But I don't want us to paint too. I don't want us to lose hope. The village is fractured. The village is broken, but the village still exists.
Yes.
And I think everybody on this call is part of that. Is part of the pieces. So the village still exists, but it needs more cohesion. And one of the greatest challenges to me is the challenge of what our youth see, and that is visually, that is the mass media industry. I believe has the greatest impact on the destruction of our youth, because it goes into the mindset. And once you destroy the mind or make the mind see, they're youth that you lend a helping hand and they see you as the enemy. Meanwhile, their friends are pulling them into the streets, having them do negative things, and they're looking at them as if they're their brothers. You know, so they look at love in a skewed way. So they can look at their sisters become freaks and think that is the way to go, as opposed to that woman in that image. Could be your mother, could be your sister, could be your aunt, or actually is. And that should not happen. But the mass media industry has probably the greatest negative impact on our lives. And we must take, either better control of it, number one, and two, control the images that our youth see. Not that they can't look at anything, but you got to be careful about what your youth look at.
Absolutely. I'm coming to you, Brother Billy. I just want to say, Brother Billy is he is going to be my co-host for part 3. We have an exciting panel for part 3. We have 2 young men. One is his son, and another person is Cole Anthony, a lottery pick in the future draft, that they're going to elaborate on how it is being young men and what motivated them to stay on the right path, what were their leaderships, what were their mindset, and how can they give back and help to their community. But Billy, getting back to what we were talking about, listen, you're doing this I commend you for this. And I had a long conversation with Ivor. I'm gonna give you some time to really chop it up on this. Ivor and I was talking yesterday. I was talking to a law enforcement official, and we were talking about new community policing and what Jeffrey was talking about doing. Brother Jeffrey, he's a good brother, so I know he's going to try. And they talked about throwing out, we grew up in the PAL era. We had after school centers and programs. We had a lot of youths. You know what I mean? Shout out to my man, Sean Couch, that we was talking on Sidebar about a lot of things too. Sean, whenever he's ready, he's going to come on, and just other does. Another shout out to my martial arts brother, Kareem Hines, out in I think it's Indianapolis, that he's doing his thing about with the young men. But what I'm trying to say is that talking to Ivo yesterday, and we had a long dialect, and I want everybody to segue after Billy says whatever he feels and wants to say about this, that he was saying that those days of just giving the basketball out to people of color is kind of dated and over, and Ivo and I chimed on it. We was like, well, wait a minute, like there's still an avenue, right, Ivo? We talked about this extensively. I was hoping you was there, Billy, but we're more than just throwing a basketball to us, because that's a place that we can go and learn and discuss things and become somebody. Billy, you first-handedly have dealt with young men and made them men. You know what I'm saying? I've witnessed that yesterday. So go ahead. I just want you to just talk and feel free and say whatever you want to say, brother. Please, go ahead.
I think I don't know. I was just sitting over here scratching, because once he said that, my mind started to go somewhere else.
Absolutely, absolutely.
From a historical perspective, right? When just to chime back a little bit before I get back to this second question that you said.
Yes, go ahead.
One of the things, it starts with our parents, right? With these young folks' parents, right? One, the parents are more concerned about being their friends than being their parents, right? And that's where we got to get back to that. Second thing is, we have parents who just becoming adults themselves, so they are learning on the fly, right? So imagine if you're learning how to be a responsible adult, and now you got to raise a child, right? So now we lose that. So a lot of times we keep talking about our young generations and the morals and the respect. They don't have that because they wasn't taught that, right? So a lot of times when you look at some of the generations now, you have the mothers having their kids at 16, 17 years old who barely out of high school, right? And now the time they get out of college, their kid is probably going into college, right? So the cycle needs to change a little bit, right? So now when we talk about how do we figure it out, right? One of the things that we need to do is we need to not just have, these conversations with our young men, but some of our parents need mentors too, right? Even adults. I always tell adults, even when I'm doing lectures or I'm speaking to individuals, I tell people, get a board of directors of your life, right? A board of directors of your own personal life will help guide you and mentor you you know what I mean, straight through life. And I think we all, whether, you know, we want to admit that's what they are, but I think it's important, all four of us on this call right now have mentors in our life that we still pick up the phone and we still talk to and we still bounce, right? And I think we have to lead by example and show our young men this is what's needed. Now, a little bit when we talk about basketball and we just talk about like just giving these kids basketball, I'm gonna say, I'm glad somebody gave me a basketball. You know why? Because basketball saved my life.
Absolutely.
So after running around on these streets and getting shot 7 times, you know what happened? I was able to pick up that basketball again and use that basketball as a crutch to teach. And that's what I was able to do, teach, right? So basketball plays a pivotal part in our community with our young men, right? Basketball is probably the one popular sport in the world that everybody talks about and everybody want to play, right? So when we're dealing with how can we help basketball and sports, and this is my mentoring program, is the caveat to get them to you, so now you can teach them, right? Because it's like anything else. When you're playing basketball and you're playing structured basketball, it's like you need to have a certain GPA to continue to play when you get into high school.
Absolutely.
Right? You have to have that, right? So there holds right there a sense of responsibility and accountability for them, right? Because they need to do that. Do I think basketball is the key? I mean, not just basketball, but sports. Do I think sports is the key to having a successful Black young man? Absolutely not, right? But that's the one thing that if you look in our community, you know, that's the one thing they aspire to do. They aspire to play sports, right? So in order to get them from one place to another, you give them that calendar. I'm going to give you this tool to play basketball, play sports, or whatever it may be, but you need to come to me, or you need to come to a mentoring program and get other pieces to that, right? So it's just like it's like your wife cooking, Bill. She's not just going to cook your steak, right? She's going to give you some vegetables. She's going to give you some, you know, some other things.
More to it, yes.
She's going to give you some other things, but that steak is what she guides you on, right? So I think that's what we got to start remembering, right? That we got to give these young people something that they want in order to get to receive something that we want to give them, because they're not going to just take it, right? You got to give it to them. You got to force them to take it, right? But they willingly will take it if you do it the right way.
Absolutely. I just want to thank you all again for sharing your experiences and your knowledge.
Well, I just want to add one thing to Billy, because I think we need to be clear. And sports play a crucial role, but we have a lot of our kids who don't want to play sports. So I think we need to send a message. It really is about outlets for our kids when they're younger, right? Whether it's sports, whether it's technology, whether it's the arts, but it's about providing outlets. And when they come to those, whatever that outlet is, they get the other things that go along with that to help them to grow in different ways.
You know, it's so funny.
The only reason why I said sports is because I kind of piggybacked off of Bill when he said your guys had that conversation.
I agree.
I ran with the sports part, Ivo, but you being on the board of the Council and Foundation, you understand our mission and our purpose,
Absolutely.
right? That basketball and sports and entertainment is not, you know what I mean? It's not just, you know, the only thing that we want our young men to do.
No, and I totally agree with all of you.
Playing for everybody else on the call.
No, I agree with both of you. And just like the thing that you and I talked about yesterday, and Cliff, with the part of the Blue Nile, has always been stressful. Not everybody's going to be an athlete, but the bottom line is you can find something, and we all grew up with something to do. An after-school program. I was raised in an after-school program where you met people. There was arts and crafts, there was literature, there was all kind of things. There were so many different dynamics that you could go to. I just want to read some of the comments of people that are saying, and of course, this is Real Talk Chronicles. If you like it, share it. I'm so happy that my experienced panel, esteemed panel, has shared their time with us today to share us. If you like us, YouTube us too, Real Talk Chronicles. Like Stephanie said, a lot of these people, they're emulating because their parents don't have any manners. So they're learning from their parents, you're right. Well, she says, once you meet some parents, it makes sense why the children. True. Monica, I think because kids are having kids. Yes, Young adults and the teens till 25 are struggling, angry, and they talk disrespectful to their children, who in turn, very good, who in turn become disrespectful. That's the point. We might have to chime on that. Vanetta, kids patting themselves after what they see. I taught my son to say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, sir, ma'am, yes. Teaches the respect, dignity, and honor. We're going to talk about that too. Where's that lost? Claudia, respect. Some parents are not teaching the children, and some children see the disrespectful that adults give each other at home. It starts in the home, like someone of you, I think most of all of you have said. TVs, movies, etc., like you said, Cliff. Vanetta, yes, and you have to sit down and take a breath and not whip them out of anger. It happened to me with my son, and I stepped back, cooled down, spoke to him about why he was getting a whooping, because he spoke to okay, let's say, let me catch up. He was getting a whooping because he knew that he was wrong, and then he got his tail whooped, and I spoke to him afterwards and hugged him. Love reinforces discipline. I get it. Heck, we need, Vanetta, again, heck, we need to speak to the parents, because they can be the problem, not the child. Cliff, we're going to talk about that too. You do a lot of that parenting thing. We're going to get in there. I just want to reach out to all of my people. Thank you for chiming in. This is Real Talk Chronicles again. My esteemed panel is out here sharing their knowledge and wisdom. I thank you all for chiming in. We are all the solution. We may not all be the problem, but we are all the solution. Hopefully we can get back to the village. Gentlemen, let me ask you, Cliff, you do a lot of speaking to parents in regards. You and I have gone to parent houses in regards to kids. You know, I will work more extensively with Billy and Ivo on a lot of these things. But let's talk about, what do we say to the parents? How do we get the parents to get back to being parents again and not being friends with their kids? There's nothing wrong with being friends. Billy, you have a great relationship with your son. Cliff, you have a great relationship with your son. I know both of you. Ivo, you have a great uncle. We both have uncleships with his children and stuff like that. So, but here we are again. We're men, part of that village again. So I'm going to ask Cliff and Billy specifically on this. How did you keep your child on the right path? Ivo, I know, I want you to chime in on how we as uncles and mentors do that with other people's children. But Cliff and Billy, and I'm going to you, Cliff, how did you keep your child, and how do we help keep other people's children on the right path? So give me your insight on that.
Well, let me say this.
Say whatever you want, brother, please.
Because just because you are a parent doesn't mean that you've ever reached adulthood. There are a lot of 40 and 50-year-old children that never reached adulthood because they just weren't, you know, into a system. And just because you have a child at an early age, Mary was 14 when she had Jesus. When I was growing up, there were many youth that had children at a young age, but it was that, again, the village. It was that support network, whether it was their uncles and aunts, their mothers, their fathers, the next door neighbors, they all chimed in to make sure that they helped in the raising of that. That's why the village is so important. So just because you have a child doesn't mean that you've attained adulthood. You know, we have a lot of people out here that never attained adulthood. And so that's where these other programs come in, are so important, because, and then the other thing is, because you may have grown up in a household that you don't have an adult rearing you. You have a child, mother, and maybe missing father, or maybe mother and father that have never reached adulthood. I'm talking about mentally, physically, not physically, but mentally and spiritually. So that's where a program like mine and others that are on this, that's where we come in and we teach them. So when they come in, when they hear things from us, you know this, Bill, when we tell them certain things about why it's important for them to stand up, why, you know, straight up, look a person in the eye, you know, talk loud so you can be heard, pull your pants up, you know, your hygiene, all of those things that should be taught in the household, they look at us as if we're Martians. Yeah. But however, through the process, they start to understand. So even though they may have come out of a household that doesn't have a real adult, we break that cycle. So we try to give them the information that's necessary in order for them to become well-grounded, spiritually grounded, morally guided, and culturally enriched, so they become the adult for that next generation. It breaks that negative cycle. So I don't want us to think that just because they're in a household with a person 20, 30, 40, or 50 years old, that they're in a household with an adult. No, that they could be in a household with someone younger minded than even themselves.
Absolutely. That's preach, brother. Brother Billy, go ahead, baby.
Hold on, let me just digest what Elder just said, man. I need to digest.
That's real talk.
That's real talk. And that's what we're here about. Exactly.
He was saying some stuff that just made so much sense to me that I just got caught up in, listening to him. And I sort of forgot what we were just talking about because I'm sitting there so true. Like, you know what I mean? So,
hold on. I'll give you a chance to digest it. Let me just give a little public service announcement. Right now, like I said, everybody, we appreciate you. I'm Bill Forster on behalf of my other half, Malika Forster, who's holding it down. She will be here Wednesday doing her thing with the ladies, talking about our young sisters. But by the end of the segment, we will definitely, the men here will talk about our young sisters too, as she will talk about that. Also, Brother Billy will come back with part 3 with 2 individuals, his son and future draft pick Cole Hamels, lottery pick. And they're talking about, this is the part 3 of Saving Our Youth, how they, as young men, have made it and how they give back. Also, I just want to just chime in. Billy, let me know when you're ready, but I just want to read what other people are just coming in. Vanetta.
I'm ready, just let me know.
All right, I just want to view a few people comments. Vanetta, yes, you and you sit down. Okay, we talked about that. Brandon, my man Brandon Pierce said, can we find programs that responsible adults can join in the guiding of the next generation? I volunteer for Winter for Kids in New Jersey to partner with kids for your organization and encourage values to keep kids busy during the time. My cousin Linda chiming in from Virginia. Those boys 3 and 4 watch too much YouTube. Well, you got to stop them. You got to put your hands on them and tell them, I mean, when I say put your hands on them, turn the TV off and shit. Joseph Vincent, comment on the generational curse of Black women raising their sons without their fathers. Sometimes it's an emotional outburst. Tell her son, you just like your father and you are never going to amount to anything. That's deep. I'm gonna let Brother Billy comment, and I have some more comments. Like I asked you all later on to go back, chime in, comment, and converse with the people in here that talking. Go ahead, brother. The floor is yours, and then we go into Ivo. Go ahead.
What was the question again, Bill? I'm sorry.
Brother, let me tell you something. It is so hot and good energy in here. I kind of forgot my damn self. I know one thing we're talking about the parents and the youth. I just said there's still so much, man. Really, Ivo, do you remember?
You asked them about raising. You asked them about raising their kids. We're the uncles. They're the fathers.
Yes. Okay.
There we go. All
right, go ahead.
So for me, my dad wasn't in the household. My dad was outside the household, but he was a, intricate part of my life. He was with me, through every walk, that I took. And one of the things that he said upon him, before he died, he said to me, is one thing that you should always do is be a man and take care of your children, no matter what happens with you and their mother, right? So that was something that I always took to heart. And the other piece to it is I realized that I needed, as a father, I needed brothers that I respect and I love to help me because I didn't know it all, right? So when you having a kid at 24, 25 years old, like there's no handbook to be an adult, right? And growing up in Harlem when, we was just trying to figure it out, right? I didn't have a whole lot of money at the time, so it was just like, I relied on the after school programs, right? I relied on the Saturday programs. I relied on some of his coaches to kind of be that second dad. And I wasn't afraid to, say, yo, listen, I need you to get him because, me and him are not connected. So it's so funny that when we talk about basketball, we talk about parenthood. Basketball was the same game that brought me and my son together, but also was the same piece that tore us apart, right? Because I didn't know how to be a father, but I knew how to be a coach. So I just started coaching him through everything, through brushing your teeth. It was the coaching demeanor, right? Walking down the street, it was the coaching demeanor. Talking to him, it was the coaching demeanor. Then, going to his basketball, being his coach, I'm coaching him throughout the game. And then on a ride home, I'm coaching him about the game, about all the things he did. So there was a point where he was like, at going into high school, where he was just like, yo, can you just be my father? Like, don't be nothing else. I don't want to play for you. I don't want you to come to none of my practices. I don't even want your help basketball-wise, right? Just be my dad. And for a long time, and I go back to what Elder was saying, I was that guy that was 26, 27, 35 years old when my son was probably 10, and I was still immature as a man because you know what? My dad was gone. I kind of really didn't have a role model. I really didn't have a mentor. So I had to rely on, people that I knew that was probably 3-4 years older than me, but was probably 10 years younger than me mentally, right? So, it's just like the blind leading the blind. So I had to figure out a way how to connect, right? And this is why I say basketball, taught me how to connect. It taught me, took me around the world, back and forth. It took me to do 2 documentary films and win 2 double NCP awards on basketball. So it was more so, and I didn't realize that I was becoming a father to so many other young kids who didn't have fathers, right? So, I remember when my son's high school coach came to me because I thought my son was going to follow my footsteps and go to my old alma mater and go to the high school I went to and play basketball at the high school I went to, take my number. And my son did the total opposite of everything that I wanted him to do, right? And a part of that was just like, I want to be my own man. I want my own identity. I want to do whatever I'm going to do on my own merit, not because of my dad, right? So now this time, basketball was like all we knew, right? Whatever program I started or whatever program I was running, he was there. So we had gotten to a point one time where he just was like, Dad, don't speak to me. He said, don't speak to me. And one time I grabbed him up so hard in the streets, he picked up the phone and he called the police, right? He was a young kid. He was probably about 8 years old, but he called the police. And it struck me how, they are taught to call 911 on your parents. Right. It's okay to call 911 on your parents because your parents can't chastise you like they should. Right. So with that being said, is I always pride myself on listening. Right. So after that, I became a better listener. Right. So listening to our young people is a pivotal part of getting their respect. Right. Because they just want to be heard. Right. So with my son, it was more so like, you know what, Ivo, there was plenty of times as an adult, at a 46-year-old adult, I call Ivo, yo, listen, you better speak to your nephew because I'm going to kill him because he got a basketball scholarship, full ride, and he's like, he doesn't want to go because, he want to do something else. And it was just like, yo, I'm going to kill him. So it was just like, I needed brothers like you guys to take my own son from me and be like, I got him. Prime example, I'm going to give you a quick story and we're going to laugh out and move on. So, Bill, I bought a bike ride yesterday. Me and my son was going at it because I was like, you need to be at the bike ride, get your bike, I'll meet you. He wound up hanging out with his friends. He didn't show up on time. So I'm really mad because like you don't show up, we got a problem. Yeah. So I'm yelling at him. And then Ivan walked up to me. He's like, where's Bryce? I said, here, you call him. He picked up the phone. And I don't know what Ivo said, but when we got to 79th Street, guess who was rolling in the park on his bike with his friends? Right, so it was just like, you know what? I needed that because, we forget that there's other people who has that other ear, you know what I mean, that they love, that they listen to. And I didn't realize, like, I'm one of those guys that my son don't listen to nothing I say, but every friend that he has and every friend that he knows and any other young men that they listen to me like I'm a goddess, but my own son don't. So sometimes we gotta say, you know what, let me pass this on.
And I commend you for that. And I think that just segues into being a village, and that is so appreciative. It's just like when I saw him yesterday, I was like, yo, what's up? You know, dapping him out, you know what I'm saying? And you introduced me to the crew. And it's love is love. Like I had to tell somebody the other day, like, yo, listen, you know, you got uncles. Like, I'm an uncle, you know, I don't have any biological children, Malika and I don't, but I have a lot of godchildren. And like I was telling you, I said, I haven't spoken to my gods, a few of my godchildren, but I raised one goddaughter, you know, as her father binged out on drugs, who everybody knows, I call that my daughter. That is my daughter. I raised her since she was 7 years old, along with her mother. So, beautiful thing. Ivo, like you said, that's a beautiful segue to Ivo and an uncle on that.
There's so much in this right now.
Yes.
So a couple of things, and I have had the fortune of being able to influence young people's lives for a very long time. And I always say to the parents, I have one distinct advantage. I am not their parent, right? And I claim that I have a lot of kids, Bill. I have nieces, but I have a lot of children that I call my children, because I will snatch them up and bust their behinds just like I'm their parent, right? And they know that. Same thing with Bryce. When he starts going at it, we cut it. I'm not your father. I will whoop your ass. Let's be clear.
Exactly.
You know, but I also recognize the role that I play, and I think the uncles recognize the role that we play. We can oftentimes have the conversation that the children are uncomfortable having with their parents, right?
Absolutely.
We can also oftentimes give a perspective about why your parent may be reacting that way that they may not understand from their parents. But I think we have to take that role very seriously, because it's kind of like saying, look, have you ever thought about this? Do you know what your dad or your mom has done for you? And I had my dad in the household, but I'll tell you guys this, my dad was there, but he was a true Caribbean man, and the cycle was at play. His job as the man of the house was food, shelter, and clothing. That was his job. So all of the emotional stuff and let's talk about this and all that stuff, that was not my dad. But I had to recognize that when I was old enough to recognize, I just have to accept him. And there was a point where I hated my dad in my life. I really did. And then he became my man. But I had to understand that, and people had to coach me on that. But what I appreciate about my parents did, they understood their limitations. And they gave people in the community the permission to do and take and whatever I needed to help to guide me. And that was take me on trips, that was cut my behind, that was expose me to whatever. All of those things, they recognized that, and they allowed people to do that. So really giving the village the okay. So I'll give y'all one other quick example. And Billy talked about, my relationship with his son, Bryce, and we have a great relationship. But sometimes we talk about things that he wouldn't talk to Billy about, just in terms of his frustration.
Of course.
Case in point, yesterday, he was like, well, you know how my dad, da, 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 da. I'm like, I got you. I understand your dad. Trust me, I do. But here's what I need to happen. And he was like, bet, I'll see you at 79th Street. So I understand that role. And Marita Green Monroe, Earl Pearl Monroe's wife, and her grandson, Monroe, and Marita, I just saw her 2 days ago, and every time she introduces me to someone, she tells this story. She was with her grandson, and he had to be 2 or 4 years old, really young. And they were at a restaurant, and he was acting out. And I went over, and I said, young king, come with me. And she looked at me, and she's like, okay. And I took him outside, and we had a chat. Just a little kid, me and a little kid, what's up, what's going on, what's wrong? And he calmed right down, and now he can't see me in the street and not talk to me, but she was so appreciative that I think we have to do that. Those of us who are uncles in the community, who are part of that fabric, we have to support and step in and make a difference where we can, because it takes a village to raise our children.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Let me tell you something, Cliff. Um, Cliff and I have spoken at night when we didn't want to about how certain youths have spoken to their mothers. And Cliff and I have kind of taken that role as the bounty hunter. Real talk, right, Cliff? And he will go to your house. We are dealing with a situation right now where we have a youth that came under our wing and has gotten out of hand, lost his effing mind. Excuse my French. I was about to say it, but I didn't want to say it because we on somebody else's airways until we YouTube it, until I get my own. But you know what's so funny? We're the dying species, and that's why it's so glad when you had that segment, because I had spoke to your son about it, and I spoke to Cole about it, that right now we are reaching that epic uncle, we're already there, uncle OG status, where the youth kind of are not going to listen to us too much. And let me tell you something. I was teaching martial arts at Harlem Children's Home, and I had to tell a kid one time, and he was coming in, and he was flapping off at the gums, talking real reckless. And I had to tell him, I said, well, you know, this is martial arts is a dictatorship, right? And I said, when you come in here, I can put my hands on you because this is my house, right? Martial arts. So he was like, yo, da-da-da-da-da. I said, listen, shorty, I put my hands on you. He said, well, I'll tell my daddy. And I said, I'll put my hands on him too. That's why I'm good at this. You know what I'm saying? That's why I got a Hall of Fame with this. You know what I'm saying? But we're at a stage right now when I look at the lawlessness at the youth. Their role models, Cliff, and you know this firsthand. I haven't spoken to any of your kids, Billy. I haven't spoken to any of your kids, Ivo. But Cliff knows this. I facilitate a community conscious segment with the Blue Nile, and I will do that until my last breath. That I tell the kids, you respect the person on the corner that you fear more than the person, the aunt and the uncle, or the person that mentors you and helps you. I go to schools. I speak around the country. I 5 boroughs are in my hand. And I talk to these kids and I tell them, stop disrespecting the people that love you. If we can just kind of talk about why do you think the kids have lost respect for the people that love them the most? I know that's a hard topic. It's a hard sell. But I'm going to start with you, Ivo, and then I'm going to go to you, Billy, and I'm going to end with you, Cliff. So there, Ivo.
That's part of the fabric, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people, you know, disrespect the people that they love because of whatever the dynamics are there. But I wanted to just make a point about, you know, and Bill, you and I have the same demeanor in terms of somebody gets out of hand, we want to snatch them, right? But what I've learned over the years, because I've dealt with so many people's children, sometimes they just need someone to talk. Sometimes they just want to, you know, and if we show disrespect to them, that's what comes back. And so when we show them something different, I normally get a different reaction when I do that. Let's just have a conversation. What's going on with you? You know, help me understand so I can better help you or support you or whatever. And I get a whole different reaction from a lot of the young people when I do that.
Okay, excellent. Billy?
You know, Bill, that's a very robust question, right? Because it goes back to something that, you know, we talked about earlier. A lot of us, you know, and I'm saying us because I'm still in this village, right? So when you're in that village, you got to go as that person too, right? But a lot of us don't understand what love is, right? A lot of us didn't come from that love atmosphere, right? That tough love was something that we thought was the way that we had to do it. And, you know, a lot of times from a coach perspective, you know, I didn't realize that, you know, when I'm yelling and I'm grabbing kids up and I'm talking to them, you know, parents is like, good, he's doing something that I can't do. I can't grab my own child. I can't yell at my own child. So it becomes a catch-22, right? But I do think, you know, when we talk about hurting people, you know, and disrespecting people, we disrespect the people that's closest to us, no matter what. You know what I mean? That's in all walks of life, right? And we're not just talking about
Very true. Yes.
us men as adults, right? Like we hurt those who we love and we, you know, and that we respect the most. The key to this, right, is to understanding that we have to change the narrative on the way that we deal with everyone, not just with these young folks, but the way that we come in contact with each other, right? The way that we speak to each other, right? It's like when a child sees a man, when a young man sees a young man, an older man treating his mother with respect, he's going to treat another woman with respect. But when he see a man disrespecting his mother and his mother's allowing it, he's in his mind, it's okay. Yep. Right? So there are so many different variables that we got to kind of, like, we got to understand here. Like when we're talking about respect, that word respect needs to be broken down to the very syllable of it, right? Because yes, respect comes a long way, right? There's a lot of times where our young men don't respect us because we're not respecting ourselves, right? And the way, like you said, Ivo, the way that we come off to them is with a sign of disrespect. So it's like anything else. You come with fire, I'm coming back with fire. I'm not coming back with water, right? So that's how our young people are now, because their mentality is a little bit different than, you know, when we were growing up.
Thank you. Brother Cliff, like I said, you and I, we discussed, we talked, we've gone to people's houses, bing bong, yo, what's good? Right now, we might have to do that with a young man. You know, go ahead, brother, please elaborate as much as you want to.
This is where the village, the men of the village, you know, are so important because, you know, when in my days, and actually in Blue Nile Village, you're not going to disrespect your mother. That's just not going to happen. You know, there's going to be consequences for it. And we can talk all day, but sometimes it has to be physical. And, you know, putting that foot up your butt, sometimes that's necessary. And that's just the reality of it. You know, the Bible says, spare the rod, spoil the child. And that's the reason for it. But I'm gonna read you something from Malcolm. And he said, if you form the habit of taking what someone else says about a thing without checking it out for yourself, you'll find that the other people will have you hating your friends and loving your enemies. So when our youth grow up and they don't have the balance, there's a balance in nature. There's the yin and the yang. There's a mother and a father. But if there's just a mother, where's the yang? The yin is there, but where's the yang? So when you don't have that, they go out and they start looking for it somewhere else. They're gonna seek it from somewhere else. And so they see the people maybe on the street because now the teachers and the counselors and other people, because you know, society said you can't put your hands on the youth, you can't do this to the youth. So they're looking at others, and again I go back to this the images that they're seeing in the mass media industry, and they're getting that false sense of what a man really is. And so I'm gonna give you a quick example. Had a young man, father wasn't around, mother raising three children, one son and two daughters. He wound up one day, he lived in the Bronx, wound up one day, you know, he kept getting, he's a tough guy, tough young brother. He kept being pulled one way or the other way. The Crips and the Bloods, he decided to become a Crip. He wound up, they had him go out and he wound up with another young man. He pulled out a knife, went up to a brother and took his cell phone. Little did he know that there were two undercover cops sitting right there watching it, not looking for him. They were on an undercover sting, but they just happened to be there. And as soon as he turned around, they jumped out and they arrested him. Well, they put him in. They took him down to get what do you call it, Bill? To get processed.
Yes.
And the mother came to us and she fell out on the floor one Saturday morning. He was still there. He was there all overnight. And she said what happened. So to make a long story short, I went to the court with the young brother. It was myself, his uncle, his mother, and his grandmother. And we went to the courthouse, and we're sitting there. So I asked him, I said, young brother, who's here for you? He said, what do you mean? I said, family, like who's here for you? And he said, you, my mother, my grandmother, my uncle, and you know, what do you mean? I said, no, dog, family. You know what I'm saying? Family, brother. You know, where's your family? You know, where your dogs at, brother? He said, they're not here. I said, now you know who your real family is. Why don't help them get out that situation? But it's just the miseducation. Carter G. Woodson talked about the miseducation of the Negro. It's our miseducation that causes us to do a lot of things that we will not normally do. But again, the fractured society, the fractured family is so much the basis of us reuniting and getting our people back to where they need to be. And if not for us, then who? If not now, then when? And if not the ways that we're talking about, then what ways are there? I don't down anybody trying to do anything. All I know is that we're trying to do it in the best way that we can, and I'm here to help support you brothers in the way that you can. And if we help support each other, we continue to rebuild this, as Dr. King called it, the beloved community.
It's a beautiful thing. I appreciate it. Like I said, you know, I have a testimony I want to share with you guys. First and foremost, let me just tell everybody out there that's listening, we have some beautiful people chiming in, and I appreciate you all. And like I said, I ask you all later on in your leisure time to go back and converse with the people that have chimed in. This is Real Talk Chronicles on behalf of my beautiful wife, Malika Forster, and myself. This is what we do. I tell people all the time, Real Talk is about what, after my parents passing, I knew I needed therapy, and I developed a group, and we started conversing about our upbringing. It chimed into relationships. It's done so much, and due to so many things, I am here today. I do think, besides being a community activist, I think this is a platform that I've embarked on that I will always try to build dialogue. I don't care who watches it, but as long as somebody watches it, I will always be a voice, a vessel to share some kind of knowledge. I want to tell a story about a time when I was at the Blue Nile, and I would always speak. Cliff would ask me to converse with the kids on how to interact with law enforcement, and it became my own platform, which I have with the Blue Nile, and I've been doing it probably for now, maybe, who knows, 10 years. So I facilitate community conscious things, Elder Harris and Cliff and all the other sisters that participate, and they come in and support me, and they let me keep it real. Cliff set up a big seminar at Abyssinian Baptist Church. I say all that to say that a lot of times I don't get the accolades. When I say the accolades, I hear the after stories. I think it was Elder Simmons, and I always say the story is not true unless somebody can co-sign it. We had a child, a young brother, young son in the program, nice brother, but you could see he was on the edge of being volatile. His name slips me, and I'm glad it does, because maybe he doesn't want to hear about his transgressions. But he was always tight, but he respected me because he knew I had this hand game for his ass. And Cliff had his hand game, and there's some other elders that we had no problems being enforcers. With that being said, I did my presentation and I spoke on how to interact with law enforcement. Later on, I think it was Elder Vincent, like I said, he came and told me that the brother had a confrontation with police officers. And from my lecture, he learned how to interact with law enforcement.
That's right.
Which he didn't get incarcerated. he was able to be like, okay, get out of here. I've heard a lot of thank you, elders, thank you, Bill, thank you, detectives, a lot of things. But I will tell everybody right now to this day, that testimony keeps me coming, everybody and anybody that I deal with, because the bottom line is I don't hear the stories a lot of times. I do hear a few of them, you know, thanks to Miss Young, she'll be on with Malika. But you know what's so funny? I don't know, Billy, Ivo, Cliff, a lot of times we don't hear those praises. Not that we do this for praise, but the bottom line is, yo, to hear that somebody didn't get shot, didn't get hurt, didn't get killed. Billy, Ivo, Cliff, I know you have testimonies, and I just want you to give me one testimony, if you can, of somebody that just comes to your mind that you helped and saved. And we're going to get into some other stuff real quick before we just chime out. But let's give a beautiful notion. What story kind of touches your heart? Because that touched my heart, and that makes me stay true to my game on always being here. And I'm going to start with you, Ivo, and I'm going to go with you, Billy, and then I'm going to go with you, Cliff. So go ahead, Ivo.
Oh, God. I'm fortunate because I have a lot of young people whom I've worked with over the years, and they're all, you know, mature in careers and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll go back to a story many, many moons ago when I was in college admissions. I was doing I had some kids in from high school and doing a thing about going to college and education and your career and whatnot. And I had a young man get up in the middle of at the end of the session, actually in the session, and then we talked afterwards. And when we went around talking about what we wanted to be, he goes, I want to be a drug dealer. And I was, again, in the crowd, I was like, okay, how am I going to respond to this young man saying he wants to be a drug dealer? And I don't know why I did this, but I said, okay, can't say I agree with your choice, but here's what I'm going to ask you. If you're going to be a drug dealer, why not be the best drug dealer there is? And they looked at me like, huh? I said, I can't take a drug dealer. I'm not into that. But if that's your choice, then be the best at it. Don't let anybody else be better than you are. Come to find out afterwards, the young man really wanted to be a chef. But he was playing this game because of his boys and all this stuff. And that's the path he was going down, and he ended up becoming a chef. Because we had a talk and he realized that he needs to do what he really is passionate about, and that was being a chef. And he became a chef.
Awesome. I'm gonna come to you, Cliff. I'm gonna let Billy go last. Go ahead, Cliff. Give me a story, brother, please. I know you probably have a baggage of stories, but go ahead, please give me one.
Trying to think of one, but I mean, I have like a lot, like you said. But I just want to make one quick point, is that even though these youth are not our biological children, they are still our children.
Absolutely.
And so we are still their fathers. We are still their uncles. We are still their grandfathers. So I don't want anyone to get it confused. I have a number of youth who call me father, who call me daddy, who call, you know, and call me uncle, especially when I was in the school, they would call me uncle. So, you know, it doesn't have to be the biological, you know, like Bill said, that is your daughter, brother, you know, that is your daughter.
I own it.
You know? So, you know, so let us never get that, you know, get that confused. That is part of what the village is about. So in the village, there were youth that would stay with other people, sometimes all the way up to months at a time. And there were even times in the African village that they wouldn't even know who their real biological mother or father was at one point, because they would be interchanging, you know, into different households. So that's the village concept. I'll just give you one quick story. There was a young man, and he was giving his mother, his mother was telling us that he was giving her a lot of problems. So myself and another elder decided that we would do a house visit. So he came to the program that Saturday. Later on that day, myself and another elder went and knocked on the door, and he opened the door and nearly dropped dead. And so we went in, we went to his room. His room was filthy, and we started a conversation with him. During the conversation, he's told us that he and his mother don't have a relationship at all. And we asked him, we said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I come home. I said, do you talk? He says, no, not really. And so he wound up telling us that this kid was maybe 13 years old. He has to fix his own food. He has to do everything on his own in the household. And then when we spoke to the mother privately, we spoke to him privately, the mother privately, she said, well, I'm trying to raise him to be a man. I want him to know how to clean and cook for himself. I want him to know how to do this. I said, but do you realize, number one, not only is he 13, but number two, one of the greatest gifts that you can ever give him is mama's home cooked, mama's home meal. You're denying him that at a young age.
Right.
And also that you never have you never sit down and talk with him. You all don't eat together. You don't converse. To make a long story short, that whole situation turned around because we put in place, we challenged her and gave her some direction as to what it would mean to be a better parent and him to be a better and understanding and loving son. And through the process, it was over a year that this took it. He didn't pass through the program the first year. He came back the next year, passed through, and actually she's one of our top volunteers up in Westchester. But the young man is doing well now, and he's on his way to college.
Yes.
Beautiful thing. Awesome. Brother Billy, give me a good story, baby. I know you got a bunch of them too.
Man, I have a few of them, man. For me, the most important thing about it is I know that I played a major part in saving a lot of young men's lives, and I will continue to do so until the day that my father tell me to come on home and hang out with him. So one of the stories that I will say is, doing coaching AAU, this was some years back when I first really got started. Didn't realize how AAU consumed a lot of my time and consumed, was a pathway to get our young men out of our communities who never been past the Brooklyn Bridge. We were in DC at a game. We had a basketball game, and I remember there was a team called DC Assault out in DC, and we were about to play them. And my boys got into a little confrontation with them. Now, you got to remember, now we in D.C. in someone else's territory. And at one moment, D.C. was the murder capital of the world, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely, kid.
So
I kind of knew where my family's from. I know. Yeah.
I kind of knew that we were going to have a little bit of problems, man. So, during the game started to get a little hectic, get a little rough. And one of my guys just kind of was just like, came to the locker room and was like, yo, I'm going to punch this dude in his mouth so hard. I said, no, you're not. You're going to stay right here because I'm kind of worried about myself now. I got to defend you as your dad. I got to defend you.
Exactly.
I swear, we walked outside that school. It was so many of those young boys outside, man. I thought I didn't think we was going to get out of there alive. But, I had a conversation with a couple of them, man, and it turned the situation around, and I was grateful that they gave me the opportunity to speak to them, and there was some older gentleman there from DC who was also a part of their organization, and they helped us out.
That's what's up. Of course, I'm chiming in and I'm watching all the people that are lows and highs, and like I said, I ask you all again to, in your time of leisure, to go back and converse with all the people that have chimed in. Lee Hodge, respectively, his beautiful brother, Jim Broxton, Paula, thank you, Paula Fields, Lynette, my Uncle Willie just chimed in, Althea, I see you too. There's so many people from all our relationships that we've had. Segueing into before we close out, let's talk about our young sisters for a second.
Wait, Bill. Wait.
Yes, go ahead.
Before we go,
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead, please. Chop it up.
Before we go to the girls, you know, me and I will talk about this all the time. We talk about it with you. I'm solution oriented, right? Like I'm like what's our end game, right? We have these conversations, right? Now as men, we got to do something about it, right? So what I'm proposing that we do, right, is you're a part of my our bike club that we have, that we, you know, our fellowship, and we do, you know, bike riding in the city, you know, just the men. What I want to do, Bill, and I know a bunch of our listeners on here, I want all of us to commit, you know, as many people can commit to bringing one young fella to the bike ride on our next ride, right? And that's part of our fellowship, right? So now you know what I mean? We're getting those kids, those young men, you know, the mothers, even if you want to bring a kid that's 12, 11 years old, we got them. We're gonna ride through Central Park. We have a little fellowship with them. We gotta start stepping up to the plate, right? Like I love these conversations, they great, but what's our action items, right? What are we doing to follow up on that, right? So, you know, and I know a lot of people keep chiming in saying, you know, more mentorships and more mentors. We need to step up and say, you know what, we'll be a mentor. Like bring your kid to meet us on the day that we have our bike ride early in the morning, you know, and let them hang out with us for a couple hours, right? You know what I mean? I think that's important. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to name a fellowship, you know, mentorship Sunday, something like that, where, you know, we can just have some young brothers come, you know, and just ride. So, you know, Elder, if you want to bring some of your young men, either we can talk to the guy on 10th Street to see if we can, you know, get some bikes for people who don't have bikes, and, you know, we can all, you know what I mean? Let's just try to figure it out. But it was just on my heart.
Listen, I co-sign that. I'm with you 100%. I think, let me tell you something, and it's so funny, like I said, you jumped it, but that's what it was, because the ending segue, I was going to say, what do you want to suggest? But the bottom line is, go ahead, Ivor, I know you want to say something. I don't want you to forget it.
I want to add to Billy, because the other thing is engaging young people in these conversations, right? So the Counseling Foundation, we're getting ready to put out the date. We are actually having a webinar, or a Zoom call with, can I say who we're going to have?
Hey, brother.
Yeah, they confirmed. Yeah, it's confirmed.
Okay, so with Michael B. Jordan and a couple other people are going to be on a panel for us to talk to young men. And that's going to be the early part of August. We're going to send out a date sometime this week. So inviting you guys to get the young men to be a part of this conversation as well.
Oh, good. And I hope I can, if I can be a part of it, just you guys let me know, please.
Absolutely.
Just one little caveat there.
Go ahead, please, Cliff.
Michael P. Jordan has signed up to portray the father of one of the young sons in Blue Nile who died in Afghanistan. And the book is called A Journal for Jordan. Michael P. Jordan was signed to play the father's role, and it's directed by Denzel Washington.
Awesome.
Absolutely. That's what's up.
That's amazing.
So we're on some real positive stuff.
You know him, Bill. His name is Jordan Kennedy. You probably know him when you see him. Young brother Jordan from last year.
Okay, that's what's up.
Awesome.
Before we segue out, two things. The next part 2, Billy and I will be doing, Billy will be my co-host for part 3, where we have Cole Anthony and his son chopping it up with us about how the youth of today can mentor, and how can people like ourselves help still be involved in that. But Malika, my wife, will be doing part 2 Wednesday about the sisters, the young daughters, the young ladies. Gentlemen, we as men, we don't get all the time to pick that we want to have boys. Let's talk about what are we doing for our young sisters. I'm going to start with you, Cliff, Billy, and I'll end with you, Ivo. The bottom line is, I was working at Harlem Children's Home. realized that these young daughters, these young sisters, needed a man figure as their sensei, as Mr. Bill, as whomever they called me of respect. I had to embrace them sometime. I had a woman come to me, a lady of power, said to me, so you can't hug those children. I said, let's check this out. I'm hugging them from the side. I understand that these girls need hugs. They need a father figure. And if sensei is their father figure, and they come to me every day because they need a hug, because they're not getting it at home, I'm going to do it. You want to fire me? Go ahead. I don't give a F. But the bottom line is, if this is the only hug that this girl is getting from a man that she respects, that she comes and she wants to converse with him about what's going on in her life. Does he like me? Does she like me? Oh, sensei, how do I feel about this? How does that? I'm going to hug that. There are people right now watching me on Facebook, on Instagram, that their daughters understand who I am as sensei. And I'm saying that is that we still have to give to our daughters. This is the segue to Wednesday. Malika has a conversation about the young ladies, but the bottom line is, gentlemen, please give me your insight on what we have to do for our young ladies too. Ivo, go ahead, please.
Oh, I thought it was last. Okay. Well, I think it's a couple of things. A is we have to help the young men to learn how to treat women.
Absolutely.
B, we have to help the young women to connect with female role models that can talk to them about the women's stuff, right? And help them feel comfortable and all that kind of stuff. So helping them to connect with people who can help to put them on a path. And C is we also have to be willing to lend an ear, have a conversation, dialogue, understand what they're going through, so we can point them in the right direction to resources and other individuals who can help them.
Absolutely. Brother Billy.
Like Ivo said, one of the things with our young women that I think that we need to do is also, give them a voice to be heard, and like you said, Bill, like being a father figure is something, that our young, women are looking for also, but we also, I always revert back to our young men. We got to treat our young men and our older men, how to treat women, right? How to treat a young woman.
Absolutely. Brother Cliff, please.
In Blue Nile, we have rules, and we have rules that we teach the young brothers on how to treat a young woman whenever you're in a relationship, as well as a young sister. Not only how to treat a young woman, but what to expect and not accept from the opposite sex. So those are rules and regulations, but we have to be the change that we want to see. They have to be able to see us acting in those ways, whether it's inside the program and outside the program. We have to be the change that we want to see. There was a young woman that was one thing. In our session, we have a session called Kick It. And that's when the elders, the adults, the sisters have a private session with the young sisters, and the men have a private session with the young brothers, and usually lasts about an hour. And they can talk about just about anything they want to talk about. And we just, as they say in the street, we just kick it. And so it becomes free flow. Eventually they get more comfortable with us. Now, if there's anything that becomes really serious, we have to deal with it. But for the most part, they talk to us in adolescent ways about, sex and drugs and relationships. But then we have a session each and every 6 weeks where we switch, and the elder sisters have the session with the young brothers, and the men have the session. Bill, you've been in those session with the young sisters, and the young sisters love those sessions with their quote unquote fathers, because a lot of them don't have the father figures. And the one thing that they ask all the time, well, I have a friend, quote unquote, who likes this boy, and the boy is saying this to her, and she doesn't know how to handle it, or she wants to invite him over or whatever. So they need to have they need to have those conversations with the men. There was one young lady when I was working in the school, and we were asking about a vision board, and she put down that she wanted to have 4 kids, a big house, a good paying job. And, you know, so I asked her, I said, well, aren't you maybe missing a step? She said, what do you mean? I said, what about getting married? And this was so enlightening. She said, and sad. She said, Elder Simmons, I don't know anybody in my house, in my family that's married.
And let me tell you something, just like a few comments, and I appreciate you all because, you know, let me tell you something. We as men, we raise our men to be like us, but we also want our ladies, our young daughters to be respected too. Because as I told, you know, I'm gonna tell you a story real quick and I'm gonna go into this. My goddaughter, who I raised and everybody knows, Jessica, last name is McKnight right now. No disrespect to her husband, my son-in-law. I never forget, and her mother Janice was telling me the story. For all those you know that I had a beautiful lifestyle before I married my wonderful wife next to me. And my goddaughter said to me one day, she was like, yo, who's this dude? And she was like, oh, this is this dude, this is so-and-so. She said, yeah, I want to be like you. I want to just like kind of like, in essence, I'm paraphrasing. She was like, I want to like kind of flip these dudes. And I was like, whoa. I said, wait a minute. I said, is that the perception that you're getting from me? And I spoke to her mother, Janice, and I said, listen, I'm doing something wrong. So I had to kind of break it down and let her know, like, listen, that's not what you need to see. I had to let her know, like, listen, if you're not happy, leave. That's why you see multiple people. Don't stay and be unhappy, but don't let this be the situation where you think you just go and treat people like you want to treat them. Don't be this person.
Malika, stop him. Malika, stop him now. Stop him now.
Yeah, but listen. But I just wanted to say, like Paula said, I just want to read a few comments before we chime out. Shout out to Brenda McLaughlin and Kyra Harris. They're going to be on this Wednesday with my wife, talking about saving our sisters and that aspect of it. Paula also said, I feel that the kids wonder how their fathers can leave them and shack up with another woman who has kids, and their fathers will raise the women's kids. This is a huge factor for boys and girls, but especially for the boys. I actually agree, Paula. Before we leave, I'll let everybody just chime in on that. Kyra absolutely be an example for how they should treat themselves and how they should be treated. Derek, my man Derek Holm, my dojo brother, it's not that hard. He says fathers just need to be present, and the fathers should be the fathers that you wish you had. Very, very strong point, Derek. Paula, wow, why are these kids so broken? The media plays a large role in the destruction. Kyra, being a father is not just being the president. Daddy is one who is in tune with the emotions and who can relate to his sons or daughters. Derek, this is what I mean by being present, not just physically. Ivo, okay, got you. Ivo, you here? Brian, my man Brian Hall, I moved to be closer to my youngest daughter, things being great with sports. She was in school, but once she turned 13 and I asked her about what was on her phone, everything changed. Mom did not help, but she is trying to work with me now. But communication stopped and saw the phone. You know, that's a certain thing. Sweetheart, let me tell you something. You have a show coming up this Wednesday, and you're going to be talking with the ladies on how the sisters can change and be instrumental. I know that you were raised in a single parent household.
Don't give it up, man.
No, I'm not giving it up, but I just.
Malika, I told you to stop him. But
the beautiful thing about
you messed it up yesterday, right?
but you know, just in conversing with helping our sisters, our young ladies, be ladies, and I commend your mother for raising you the way she raised you, grandmother. and we go back to the village that we were all rode up to have. Do you want to say something before we chime in? I'm gonna let these gentlemen have their last words, but do you want to say something in regards to coming up on Wednesday?
I think you said it all, actually. No, I'm really looking forward to the conversation Wednesday, and yes. I truly love and respect all of you gentlemen. I mean, your voices are necessary and they were heard, and hopefully, I think you said you're gonna have a part 3.
Part 3. Well, the part 3 is with Billy, with his son, and future lottery draft pick Cole Anthony, yep. who is a family member to Billy. And I was speaking to them, and I was just asking them about how do we bridge the gap, because right now, the people like Ivo, Cliff, and myself, and Billy, we're reaching a status of uncleism or OG status where the youth, right now, there's a disconnect. Because we're not dressing like them. We're not using their slang, their dialogue, their diction. But the bottom line is, and at the stage, when I go in and speak to these schools, I always let these kids know that, listen, I'm not here via the Board of Education. So I will, disrespect me, I'll put my hands on you. And I let them know that fear is the common denominator that I want you to understand. You're not going to disrespect me. Cliff and I know this firsthand, that the youth, you know, and I tell them all in all my presentations that, you know, listen, you respect the dude on the corner that you don't know, but you don't respect the Ivo, you don't respect the Billy, you don't respect the Cliff Simmons, you don't respect the Malika Foster. Why? Because you think we won't touch you? Listen, we're not in this game to touch you, but you're not going to say what you want to say to me and think it's all right. That's not happening. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, you know, more conversations like this are definitely necessary because we all have examples, and there's a trillion stories that we can share and examples, but like we were talking about solutions, that's what we need to focus on is, you know, what can we do to help young people, older people, a lot of people out because they need it. So this is just the start. Yeah. And I will speak for everyone, and we all appreciate you and love you and thank you for sharing your voice today.
And what I'm going to do in the segueing out, I'm going to start with you, Cliff, Billy, and Ivo. Give some parting words of encouragement. Like I said, this is a 3-part series. I think it's important that we all, let me tell you something. If we can, starting with these 4 plus 1 more, bring back the village that helped save our children. Because let me tell you something, when I go out here and I talk to these youth, I tell them that you are the future. And anybody that share this with the young people in your families, the guys and the girls, whomever, you are the future. I go around and I ask people all the time, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I hear all these accolades and stories, and I want to be this. I hear shit that I can't even pronounce and spell. And I'm wondering why. Okay, you want to be that. And I tell them, you know what's so funny? Not that you want to be, but you can be the president. I'm sure Cliff, Ivo, and Billy and myself, we never all thought that there would be a president, a Black president. And we saw one. You understand what I'm saying? Because we're all at these ages right now that we never knew that. We're happy that there is one. We see how diversity has come with racism. That's a whole nother topic. But I just want to also say that I appreciate you all for being here. I just want to let everybody know this is Real Talk Chronicles on behalf of my wife, Malika Foster, and myself. There's another segment that we're coming up, part 2, Wednesday. Malika. She wants to talk. Malika will be talking Wednesday. Billy will let me know the next time that.
Monday.
Yeah, Monday. We'll do that Monday. Also, too, Malika and I will be coming back. I will come back with police and law enforcement with my man, Kevin Branzetti. We were talking about Breonna Taylor. So on behalf of everybody, I appreciate you. I just want you all to give some parting words of encouragement and love and advice. I'll start with you, Ivo, Cliff, and I'll end with you, Billy. Go ahead.
You went the other way and then you start with me. I don't understand.
Okay, well, I don't know.
All right.
Malika threw me off.
So, I mean, I just think is for those listening and for those of us on the call, we just all have to commit to doing a little bit more. Commit to being involved. Commit to being a part of the solution. So if there's a kid we can mentor, if there's a program we can support, and support comes in many different ways. Financially, I'm sure Blue Nile can use some dollars to do some of the work that they do. Time, treasure, and talent. As long as we all can commit some form of that to continue to make a difference.
Next.
I'd like to thank you once again, you and your beautiful wife, for hosting this event, and I'm glad that I met two new brothers. I look forward to working with you all. And Bill, make sure you hook us up our information. Anybody that's looking for information for Blue Nile or to talk with me can contact me at 212-561-1449. 212-561-1449 and leave a message. And I'll leave you with these words from the late, great Jackie Robinson. A life is not important except in its impact on other lives.
Brother Billy?
Bill, why you always put me behind Brother Elder, man? Why do you do that, man? You said
I know you can follow up. I know you can bring up the ball, baby. I know you can bring it up.
Man. I'm just going to keep it simple. Let's continue to fight for our young people. Let's not give up on them. Let's take a stand. My brothers, let's get out and let's continue to fight. Let's let's bring back being the man of our house, being the man of our community, be the leaders in our community, be the people that our women, our daughters who look up to and aspire to be just like, just have husbands just like us, man. Let's change the narrative of what a Black man is.
Yes, absolutely. That's powerful. I respect that. Let me tell you something. Sweetheart, would you like to say something before we come out?
Good night.
That's my sister.
Short and sweet.
I love my Malika.
I love you.
I know you do. Exactly. On behalf of Malika, I am Bill Foster. On my esteemed panel, Ivo, Cliff, Brother Billy, let me tell you something. It takes a village. We're trying to get back to that village. We just want to save our youth. Wednesday, chime in. The ladies will be conversing about how to save our young sisters. On behalf of Real Talk Chronicles, I am Bill Foster. Thank you all. I appreciate you. Salute you.
Hello. Good night. Good night.